Welcome back, everyone, to a long-awaited episode of the Rigor Mortis podcast. Feels like it's been forever since we've done this.
I think it has been forever.
My name is Adam, and again with me this week is Jason.
My man, I think I've missed you a little bit.
It's been a while. I mean, so we gotta like catch up here. So there's the whole COVID thing going on, and we went on lockdown on March 18th?
Yeah, around there.
Around there. And you and I recorded our last episode 2 weeks prior to that, I believe, which would put us at the end of February.
Yeah.
And now here we go. We're in June, and we're just coming out with something. I did do a solo episode, but I found that I felt a little crazy talking to myself. It was weird. It wasn't natural. It wasn't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean,
how do you carry an episode by yourself?
Right.
I mean, kudos to those
people
that
who do solo podcasts. I mean, good for them. That must be difficult.
It's got to be totally difficult. How do you fill the dead air like we're doing right now?
I will say the one good thing about the break that we had is it kind of gave us a little time to brainstorm the episodes we want to do and kind of figure out where we want to go. So,
You know, it's crazy. We got on lockdown, and I feel like I'm busier now than ever before.
Oh, no joke. I mean, we had intentions on continuing the podcast, but it was hard because, we both have immune-compromised people around us, so we wanted to follow the lockdown order at first, and then it just got crazy. But both of us ended up having to work more. Of course, the kids aren't in school, so we didn't have a lot of extra time to do the podcast. So that's kind of why we took the break we did. But we're definitely happy to be back now.
For sure. And so now that we're back, what are we doing? What's our first episode, man?
Well, our first story we're going to do is on the death of Kendrick Johnson.
This is an interesting one because this is one that I saw on Facebook is being circulated to be reopened. People are signing online petitions to reopen the investigation.
Right.
They don't
feel like a proper investigation was done in the first place, really.
And maybe by the time we're done recording this episode, you and I will be able to have an idea on whether or not this should be reopened or not. I mean, I'm looking at it with a completely unbiased opinion, you know what I mean? There's parts of this story that I'm like, the police could have done things a little bit better. There's parts of the story that line up to me, and a lot of people don't think they line up.
Right.
So
what I think is interesting as well is that a lot of the cases we do are from relatively many years ago, so there's more finality to them. This case just happened in 2013, so there's still a lot of stuff that's coming out and a lot of questions still being asked.
It's very true. So where does the story start?
The story starts on Wednesday, January 9th, 2013. Kendrick returned to school at Lowndes High School after their Christmas break. That seems like a really late comeback from Christmas break. Around here, I think we go back like January 2nd normally.
Yeah, it's usually real quick. You're right. January 9th is late.
Right. So this school that he goes to, Lowndes High School, has two different gymnasiums, which are considered to be the old gym and the new gym. I've seen big schools have this, done before, so it's not really uncommon. But a lot of times, the old gym will be used more for like
gym class,
or more like practices and stuff.
Practices,
where the new gym will be for basketball and stuff like that.
Because they're bigger, and the seating usually is made to accommodate a larger population of people. And I think in this case here, what it was a smaller school, and as the community grew, they expanded the school.
Right.
So that's where it got the name the old and the new gym.
Right. And in this old gym, there was some wrestling mats that they used and rolled up kind of like a storage area for them.
Yeah, and I used to, when I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team. So I could tell you these mats were probably, 15, well, probably not 15, they're probably regular size mats. They could be as big as 30 feet long. So rolled up, it would take several rolls, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So they're rolled tight. It usually used to take like 3 or 4 of us to roll up the mats and get them, where they needed to be.
Side note, I had no idea you were on the wrestling team.
Oh, yeah. I
wrestled
in high school.
I had no idea we even had wrestling teams around here.
Yeah, no, I wrestled in high school.
You must have been a cool kid.
Yeah, 125, baby.
So they had these old mats stored in the corner of the old gym, and many of the students used these mats as storage for their things to avoid paying locker fees.
Now that's kind of interesting.
I've never heard of a locker fee.
I've never heard of a locker fee either.
Every school I ever went to, we were just assigned a locker. In younger school, it was like Miss Smith's first grade class has lockers 1 through 20. Mrs. Austin's has 21 through 40. Like it was We were always just assigned lockers.
See, I went to the school I went to. We shared lockers at one point. So like I had the upper and the other person had the bottom. I'm thinking in this case what it is at his school is there probably wasn't enough locker space
Right.
for all the students. So it was kind of whoever wants to pay gets the locker. If you don't, throw your shit in the wrestling mat.
A little weird that they have enough money for a new gym and not enough money to expand lockers, though.
Yeah, right. Well, we're just assuming, but something like that.
Right. Now, these mats that were in the corner being used for storage, Kendrick actually kept his shoes in the bottom of one of these mat roll-ups.
A very common practice at that school.
Right, and apparently he shared these shoes in this little storage area with another student.
So the way these mats go, right, you have bleachers, and these are stored alongside the bleachers, from what I understand, standing up.
Right.
Standing up, so
Right.
they're just like columns.
Right, exactly.
Okay, and there's probably 3 or 4 of them.
I think there's many more than that.
Is there many
actually.
more? Yeah.
Well, I think originally there was a few, and then over that Christmas break that they had just returned from, they added many more.
Okay.
So the one that he originally had access to was kind of further back in the heap at this point.
This is in the back of the stacks.
Right.
Okay, so one of the first ones that were put against the wall.
Right.
Okay.
Now, this school operates on a block type of schedule, so the classes and class times differ on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My school was like that as well. We had maroon days and white days where every other day you'd have your different classes.
It seems like we
Pretty
did something
normal. Pretty
like
normal.
that too.
Yeah. Now, at about 1:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 10th, the school's video surveillance cameras see Kendrick Johnson walking into the old gym. No one's behind him. No one else walks into the gym for another 3 minutes after he entered. And he was going in there to retrieve the pair of shoes that he shared with this other student.
So that's kind of interesting. He shared shoes with a student?
Yeah.
I'd heard that too, and I thought I had maybe misread that wrong or something. That's something I haven't heard of before. But it could be something as simple as this, right? Kids do athletic events, obviously. This is a
Right.
gym. This is a school. Could be, this kid's using my shoes for his basketball practice or
Right.
whatever kind of practice, you know what I mean? And he's going to throw them in there, and I'm just going to go back and grab them. You know how kids do shit like that.
Right, and I never really found any information on who this other student was, or if how close they were, but I would think that they were relatively close if they were sharing shoes together. But on this particular Thursday, like I said, the mat that he normally had his shoes in was behind the mats that they had just moved into the gym. So Kendrick goes in. They don't see anybody go in for 3 minutes after, but then Kendrick gets marked absent from his next class.
Okay, so what you're saying is they've got like security cameras that are in the gymnasium. These cameras see Kendrick going into the gymnasium, but they never see him coming out.
Right.
Now we also got a note here that the security footage doesn't cover the entire gym, correct?
Right, I believe that's true. Yeah.
And from what I understand, there's no camera angled at the area of the gym where the wrestling mats are rolled up. Is that correct?
Right.
So we have him. So what we must have is the entranceway to the gym is on the opposite side of the wrestling mats, would be my guess. Because if they're filming him walking in,
Right.
you're catching that front entrance of the gym,
Right.
or the back entrance, depending on which way it
Right.
was. But either way, the opposite end of the gym is not under security watch.
Right.
Why is that?
My guess is it's the old gym, probably isn't being used very much. To be honest with you, though, this isn't that long ago. I'm surprised that every square inch of that school isn't covered,
Well,
inside and out.
I had heard some kind of rumor that there was something wrong with that security camera that would have angled at that section of the gym. That's some side note that I had read on Reddit. I don't know if there's any kind of truth behind that.
Right.
Would kind of add to the conspiracy behind it if there was a camera that just so happened to not be functioning correctly.
I believe that one of the main conspiracy issues with this case is that the surveillance footage that was released, people seem to think it was kind of cut and doctored, I guess.
Yeah, and I had read something like that as well too. So what we know now is we have a child goes into the gym to retrieve his shoes, is never seen coming out,
Misses his next class.
and there's maybe something going on with the security camera.
Right.
If there is one at all.
Right.
Okay.
And, at this point, they're not really raising any alarm bells, even though he missed this next class. I think the next class was supposed to be a weightlifting class. So at this point, there's no real, oh my God, where's Kendrick?
You ever skip a class in high school?
a couple times, but not very much. But
Yeah.
I know people who did regularly. It wouldn't have been weird.
It's just kid shit. Kids
Yeah,
do stuff like
exactly.
that. You know what I mean? So that's why it's not a big deal.
Now, he did have plans to go to the freshman basketball game that afternoon after school, and his mother knew this. So, again, no red flags being raised for this amount of time.
Right. So school ends in the early afternoon. There's a basketball game. She's probably expecting him back 5, 6 o'clock at night, maybe.
Yeah, maybe even as late as 8, we'll say. But,
Okay.
He actually never showed up that night, of course, and his mother reported him missing at midnight.
Okay. So that makes total sense. Now, she had tried to reach him. She had contacted some of his friends, I believe, to see if they knew where his whereabouts could be, but nobody really knew.
Right, and at this point, it's pretty late, midnight, that she reports him missing. So on the next morning, Friday, January 11th, Kendrick's mother, Jackie, went to the school to tell them that her son was missing, never showed up after school, and things like that. So at this point, the administration tries to help her out by printing missing person flyers.
Hey, that's pretty quick response in a way, if you think about it. I mean, it's the very next day, the school's jumping right on board to help, locate this missing kid.
Right, and especially, I mean, we've seen it in so many cases where, oh, well, he's a teenager, he'll show up. Like,
Right.
They kind of, it seems like they kind of knew this was uncharacteristic and we're kind of like, huh, that's weird. Like, yeah, we'll help you out at what we can, but...
Because the truth is, odds are, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, kid's going to come stumbling home early in the morning after having a hell of a night.
Right.
That's usually what it is.
Yep.
No worries, right?
Right.
But the school felt it necessary to, start helping. So
Right.
obviously the mother was very concerned, and she knows her son probably better than anyone. So she was able to convey that kind of message to the school to get that quick response.
Right. Now, at about 10:30 that morning, after they had printed out the missing person flyers and things like that, there was a couple of female students who were sitting on a few of the mats, the rolled-up gym mats, and they're filling out a survey, and they actually happened to notice that there was some socks sticking out of one of the upright mats.
Probably not that uncommon, seeing as kids used to use that as a storage area.
Yeah, and they actually had thought that it was a joke at first, and one of the students climbed up the bleachers to take a look inside, and that's where they find Kendrick's body. He was basically snug tight inside this upright wrestling mat.
Now, from what I understand, you've got Kendrick. The mats are standing upright, like we said, so he would be facing head down. He'd be upside down.
Right, like he tried to crawl in it, basically.
In the wrestling
to
mats.
reach his shoes, I mean.
So what you're saying is the shoes are ahead of him. You got Kendrick in, and the socks were his that were kind of sticking out of the mat. Okay.
Right.
And from what I understand, his pair of shoes that he had on his feet at the time
Were
also
also
in
in
the
it.
mat. So you
Yes.
have his shoes, his body, and then another pair of shoes.
Right.
All in line in this mat.
Right. Now these students, of course, realize something's wrong, so they try to pull him out, but they're unable to. And at that point, one of the students called 911 using a cell phone, and with the help of a teacher, they actually knock over this mat. You got to imagine these mats are pretty heavy.
They are heavy.
They knock over the mat, and they partially pulled Kendrick out head first, but there was a very strong odor of decomposition. They also noticed some blood and some vomit. So at that point, they realized they were dealing with Kendrick was passed away.
And so at that point, they left him in the mat until the authorities showed up?
Right. The teacher came and told all students to go to the new gym. The school went into lockdown, and Kendrick's mother was informed that they had found a body. So Kendrick at that point had actually been, they assume, if he died shortly after the video saw him go in, that he had been in this up, head down position inside this mat for over 21 hours.
I wonder how long, because obviously, that's going to play its toll on your heart. I mean, your body's not meant to be upside down.
Right.
Just the way that the human body is designed. I wonder how long somebody could be upside down and unable to move and still live.
Right.
Because they're saying it could have been dead for as long as 21 hours, but I mean, who knows? I mean, it could have been...
I remember being a kid and being taught pretty early not to be upside down for too long and stuff like that.
Right.
So...
And there was some signs of decomposition already. Like you said, there was an odor.
Right.
And, looking at the images, which are pretty graphic, you could definitely see that there was lividity going on, blood pooling in his head as it's rushed down. His face was very swollen, and looking at the images that were taken at the school gymnasium and then looking at a school photo of him, it doesn't even look like the same kid.
Right.
It
doesn't at all. I mean, his face is really, really swollen in the pictures, and almost like his skin is like ready to peel off. It's a horrifying picture. Horrifying. It really is.
And because of that, some people believe that he was beaten, that he was severely beaten and put into the mats because of the way his face looked.
Right.
But a lot of people, including I think medical experts, said that it's possible for him to have looked that way just due to the fact that he was upside down and he could have been dead for up to 21 hours.
Now, of course, after they find his body, the Lowndes County begins an immediate investigation where every student that was in the gym when he was found got interviewed that day, and basically, for the most part, everybody's story lined up. Now, police came in, they took a video of the scene, which was a very graphic video.
Yeah, as we described.
Yeah, and of course, the two pairs of shoes, like you said, were found in the mat with Kendrick. One of the pairs was the shoes that he had been wearing, were on top of his body, near his feet and his legs.
Almost as though he had kicked them off and tried to remove his socks.
That's what I think, too. I think that he very likely was... When you get in a desperate position, you basically can just start squirming and hope you work your way free, I would think.
I was thinking that maybe he kicked off his shoes and his socks because those mats are kind of smooth. And you could slide across those kind of mats with socks. That's how smooth they are, like risky business.
Right.
So I'm thinking like if he takes his socks off, he's feeling like he might be able to get more grip with just his bare feet.
Right.
And also by taking off his shoes, he's probably feeling like it's allowing him a little more foot space.
Right. Now, the other pair was, of course, the pair he was retrieving, which were under his body. Basically, I would say like he was trying to reach for them in the mat. And they did find some blood, but the only blood that was found at the scene, or new blood, it's a wrestling mat, so there's probably some blood on it.
Probably.
But the only new blood was found inside the mat where his body was. There was no blood found on the outside of the mat. There was no blood that was found on his book or his folder that he was carrying at the time. So
now you're saying new blood. Is that you're saying it's his blood?
Right.
Okay. Probably being upside down and all that.
Yeah,
I would imagine nosebleed or some kind of...
Right. And I would think that at some point, probably towards the end of his consciousness, he's probably got some kind of like vertigo or something, dizziness and lightheadedness, things like that, which can very easily make you throw up. And if all your blood is pulled towards your head, that's probably going to be what you throw up.
Of course, yeah. And also, it would make sense. I mean, his head looked like it was full of blood.
Right.
And with the vomit, I mean, that also could burn his facial skin.
Yeah, you were telling me somebody you knew that was drunk that like threw up and
fell asleep in their puke.
Yeah.
And the next day they woke up and their face was red.
Ugh.
From the acid of the stomach acids burning his face.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm imagining some of that probably happened here too.
Sorry for the graphic image.
Well,
but
yeah.
That's just the way it is. So, now there was no blood that was found on his lower extremities or in the shoes that he was wearing. Some old blood was found on the column near the mats, but that was determined to not be from Kendrick. I mean, like I said, wrestling match. There's probably blood several times on those mats.
Oh, notorious for nosebleeds, Yeah,
absolutely. And there were bloody tissues that were found in the trash can of the gym's girls' bathroom, which some people say is suspicious. I don't necessarily think it is. I mean, I could think of a million reasons why there'd be bloody tissues in a girl's bathroom.
Especially a bathroom adjacent to a gymnasium.
Right. The Lowndes County Sheriff's Office tested this, and it was found to be female DNA, so it wasn't anything that was associated with him. And there was a girl who actually reported to the County Sheriff's Office that she was actually hit in the face with a flag during practice. And those bloody tissues were from her.
Were they able to confirm that by taking blood samples from her and testing them against the tissues, or did they just take it for this is probably what it is and let it go?
I'm not sure. I mean,
either way, right? I mean, the blood tested to be females.
Right.
So hey,
right,
not his.
Right, exactly,
and most likely not a female killer.
Right, and there was no blood that was found on the second pair of shoes either. The blood had actually dripped from Kendrick onto the floor, which actually pooled around the shoes that were underneath him, which basically points to the fact that he probably wasn't bleeding before he went into the mat, and
that the injuries occurred afterwards.
Right, exactly.
Kind of disproving the theory that he was beaten and then thrown into the mats, what you're saying, right?
Right.
Okay. Because there's no other blood found. Right. Just the female's blood in the trash can and just the blood that had pooled.
Right.
That was his. Okay.
Right. Now, of course, with this investigation isn't necessarily... Kendrick's family doesn't necessarily believe that a thorough investigation was done. So they actually get a hold of Reverend Floyd Rose of Valdosta Southern Christian Leadership, and they're asked to run an independent investigation into Kendrick's death. So he gladly agreed to help, and from there he worked with the family, and the NAACP got involved, and they ended up getting a legal team.
And this was about when this story started to take fire and catch on nationally.
Right. And this is in April 2013. They actually hold a public rally where several of Kendrick's family members locked hands and blocked the entrance of the county courthouse. And they were all arrested for civil disobedience. And the Reverend actually put up his home as collateral for Kendrick's mom's bond to get out of jail. So,
because what the thought was or is that his death was quickly dismissed due to the fact that he's African American.
That's right.
That still remains the thought for a lot of people.
Right, and we live way up north. We live in Maine. Realistically, that much stuff doesn't happen up here, but you're talking about the deep south where there's a long history of stuff like that happening.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I don't know this particular area. I'm not going to say this is a racist area or anything, but
right.
There definitely are areas in the south that would quickly dismiss a black person's death.
Right. I mean, the thing is that I don't know what it's like to be an African American man, and I can tell you what it's like to be a white guy deep in the woods that's totally isolated from these kind of things. So I can't really base an opinion on what it's like to live in a populous area where oftentimes it does seem like police are abusing African Americans, because I live in a place that's totally different than that.
Yeah, I went to Kentucky one time, and I literally saw Klan members on the corner handing out flyers.
You just don't have that here.
Not even close.
You know what I mean?
It was eye-opening, and it's like there are areas in the South that are definitely still like that, and that's very unfortunate. And it's time to come to 2020, but
I mean,
I can definitely understand why his family would be thinking that.
I can honestly say I think African American people are treated better here than in other parts of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So in 2013, Reverend Rose allowed the Johnsons to hold a fundraising rally that was actually hosted by Al Sharpton, and he personally contributed $500. Over $5,000 was raised during this rally, and the donors, including Al Sharpton, were actually told that the money that was raised would be used for reward information of Kendrick's murder. The family actually never set up this reward, and instead, local businessman Roy Taylor gave Reverend Rose a $10,000 check for a reward with the stipulation of a 90-day deadline. So if anybody comes out with information that helps solve the case within 90 days, they get this $10,000 reward. But
looking for a quick resolution.
Right.
Let's sweeten this deal up.
Right, exactly. And, they end up using some of this money, I believe, as well as some money that they get from the NAACP to arrange for Kendrick's body to be exhumed so they can have an independent autopsy that got performed by a private pathologist, Dr. William Anderson. So the family is looking to have their investigation done on their own, apart from the legal proceedings of the county, because they feel like they haven't necessarily been truthful.
They didn't like the state's medical examiner's response of accidental death.
Right. Now, what's very interesting about this, and actually adds a lot to the conspiracy, is that during the second independent autopsy, it was actually found out that Kendrick's organs were missing and that his body was stuffed with newspaper.
Okay. This is where the story starts to not line up for me.
Yeah, I could see that, but the state of Georgia actually says that this is not a best practice in filling body cavities with newspaper, but it's actually not illegal at the funeral home that he was at, so they actually didn't break any laws. But the Johnsons did decide to sue the funeral home, understandably. I mean, I don't know, that's not how I'd want my loved one's remains treated. But
right. The fact is, though, I mean, if this is not the best practice, but it's an acceptable practice, I understand their displeasure because they, wanted his full remains for this autopsy.
Right, and I don't know how true it is, but I had heard that this funeral home basically, did these services, free of charge, so they kind of took the cheap way out.
Okay, yeah, so
Because I think that normal practice, I'm not sure, but I think that normal practice is they typically remove your organs and they basically put them in a bag and stuff them back
stuff
in
them
your
back
body.
in, yeah.
Right. So, like I said, the Johnsons decided to sue the funeral home, and during the second autopsy, Dr. Anderson actually disputed the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's findings of accidental death, and he determined that Kendrick actually died of blunt force trauma to the right side of his neck.
It's the second time Jacqueline Johnson cried next to her son Kendrick's grave. The first time he was being lowered into the ground. This time, he's being pulled out of it.
Did you ever expect you'd have to exhume his body?
No, I didn't expect to have to bury his body.
In June, Kendrick's body was sent to Florida. The Johnsons hired Dr. Bill Anderson to conduct an independent second autopsy. In that autopsy, Anderson told the Johnsons he'd found evidence that Kendrick died as the result of a blow to the neck and not accidental asphyxia, after slipping into a rolled gym mat at school, as investigators in Georgia had said. But what Dr. Anderson did not find shocked them.
When we got the body for the second autopsy, that organs, the heart, lungs, liver, etc., were not with the body.
The brain?
The brain, they were all absent.
Every organ from the top of Kendrick's head to his pelvis gone, and his family had no idea.
So his neck was broken.
Right, and they came to that conclusion because there was a 2 to 3 centimeter bruise, and there was no broken neck bones or throat bones, no signs of internal, injuries, and there's a tiny bruise measuring less than an inch in length. So, this is supposedly the first and only time in history that this injury has been the cause of death.
So I gotta ask you. So his neck wasn't broken. There was no broken bones.
No.
Okay. There was no puncture wounds. They're basing that this was blunt force trauma and from an injury resulting in a bruise 2 to 3 centimeters long.
Right.
Which is more like a quarter of an inch.
Right.
I mean, that could have been anything.
Right, exactly. It really could have been.
I went hiking the other day. Look how fucked my knee is. You know what I mean?
Right. No, it's true. It's not a very big injury, and how many times have you got a 2 to 3 inch bruise from anything you did? On your neck is a little weird. That's not an area that you're gonna stub on a coffee table or hit on a doorway or something.
Or maybe you get a little bruise when you're crawling down a wrestling mat.
Maybe.
Potentially. I'm just saying. It's possible.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that although the independent pathologist comes to this conclusion, he does say that this injury has been the cause of death, but it likely does not mean that Kendrick was beaten or anything like that.
So then what happened? Are they saying that he created a small injury on his neck as he was either going into the mat or trying to get out of the mat, and that's what caused it?
And I don't know if they ever even say what caused it. They just said that he had this bruise in his neck, which...
I'm going to be so bold as to say that I feel like this medical examiner is just giving that family the answers that they want to hear and not necessarily the truthful answers.
Well, I would agree with you to an extent, but he actually also says that a lot of people latch on to the picture of Kendrick where his face is horrible looking, but this same independent pathologist actually tells the family that the injuries to Kendrick's face and what looks like injuries to his face is actually just caused by nothing more than skin slippage due to the position that he was in.
So what's his final ruling? What does this doctor think happened to him? Does he think he was attacked and thrown into the mats by kids, or does he think is he going with the state's original?
He's kind of in the middle. He says that this injury to his neck likely caused his death, but that he doesn't think he was beaten, and that his injuries to his face are normal based on the position he was in. So he's kind of right in the middle there. But for what it's worth, the same private pathologist, Dr. Anderson, has actually been fired from the state of Florida for unethical actions and unprofessional behaviors. So I'll take that for what it's worth. But
sure.
For the most part, the people who are thinking that Kendrick was beaten were the family and the people who support the family. So
now, what are some of the family's theories?
That he was beaten and literally shoved into the mat, which for me just doesn't make sense. But
Kendrick's mother, I think at one point had called out 2 brothers that Kendrick had a dispute with, I believe, on a school bus a year prior.
Yeah, they actually, the Johnsons themselves are publicly accusing two brothers, Brian and Brandon Bell, of murdering Kendrick. And basically, the Bell family denies this, but what's kind of interesting is that their father is an FBI agent. So that, of course, lends credence to the theory that they were perhaps, the FBI perhaps helped to cover up these boys' crime or whatnot. But the family has openly accused those two brothers, and I actually have some audio here of the brothers with their denial.
Did you have anything to do with the death of Kendrick Johnson?
No. He was like one of my good friends.
Even at the time of his death?
Even at the time of his death.
You know, every word we broadcast of this is going to be scrutinized by the blogosphere, the Twitter sphere, and so on.
Yes, sir. It should be. And I want everybody to know the truth. And I mean, they can ridicule me and they can say whatever they want, but in the end, the truth will prevail. And everybody will find that me and my brother have been innocent and always will be innocent.
Now, with this theory of the boys murdering Kendrick, unfortunately, there's not really any proof to that. But like I said, they think that the FBI may have covered it up or yada yada. But Brian actually, I believe it was Brian, actually had a full football scholarship to Florida State University. Great football school. Would be amazing to get a scholarship there. And they actually pulled his scholarship out when his name was semi-attached to this because of the fact that the chancellor of the university wouldn't let them extend a scholarship because he was, his name was toxic, basically. He didn't want that part of the program's news.
To taint the school.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, because if he really is innocent, to have that taken away from him is just awful. And, there isn't much proof, so I don't know how...
I mean, the only thing that people are going by is that these kids had a fight
a year ago.
Prior. And again, I've said it a few times this episode. Kid shit.
Oh, yeah.
It's stuff that kids do, Kids...
You're a guy and I'm a guy, and I'm going to tell you, how many fights did you have with another guy when you were younger that is your best friend now?
Stupid
That's
shit.
how guys become friends.
How many times have you and I fought?
None.
But...
But still, I have friends where, like, we hated each other, we punched each other in the face, and then it was like, actually, you're kind of cool, I didn't know that. Like,
yeah, I mean... It seemed like it wasn't a big deal, is what you're saying.
Right.
It's just typical shit.
And he even says in his interview that they had been friends for a while after that. That was history. Like, that was a year ago.
It was
that
over.
Was long gone now. And it's just unfortunate that his future may have been tainted by this if he really did have nothing to do with it. And that's unfortunate collateral damage, I guess.
Yeah.
But what's your thinking?
All right, let's solve this case. Let's solve it right now. So here's the thing. The family believes that, and others in the community members all around the country believe that the police just quickly ruled this as an accidental death. They got the medical examiner to agree, accidental death, case closed, done. The family says, there's things like what had happened exactly to him is not on camera. You got they believe that the police did a real quick investigation. And then you have the second medical examiner saying that he died of blunt force trauma, which would mean that he was hit by something.
But also that he was not beaten.
So that medical examiner makes no sense. But only thing this guy does is confuse the situation further.
Pretty much.
What do I think? I think, you drop a pair of shoes down a wrestling mat. You got to go get them. Now, these mats are several feet high. You go down head first. Okay, you're snug in there.
I can see how it would be very difficult to get out once you go in head first.
I can see that too,
To me, in my opinion, if I was somebody who had to go head first into this wrestling mat to get these shoes, I wouldn't do it without somebody there
to pull you out.
To pull me out, because I don't know, but like I said, the theory is that he may have been killed and stuffed into this mat. But where I go against that is that they have him walking in, and then they have somebody else walking in on camera 3 minutes later. 3 minutes isn't a huge window to kill somebody and stuff them down into a wrestling mat.
Right. Especially a healthy, athletic kid like Kendrick.
Right. Now, I don't know who this person was that they saw 3 minutes later, if they could have been involved, but I've never seen any speculation on that. And all the speculation about the Bell Boys, they were both in class at the time that this happened.
You know, and I gotta say, man, as much as people might hate me for saying this, I don't see any kind of injustice here. Do I see injustice in America? Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's injustice in America all the time. I just don't see it with this particular story. I think the authorities got it correct. And I think it sucks.
And I can totally see why Kendrick's mom, Jackie, feels the way she does. I mean, nobody wants to believe that their kid could die in such an innocent, accidental way. And you're always going to look for more answers, I guess. So I can see where, you know, she's like, that can't be what happened to my son. But it very well might have been.
Very well might have been. My gut says it was probably an accidental death.
I agree.
You know? It sucks. It sucks, but, you know.
I mean, if you guys have any theories that, you know, can potentially change your mind, we'd love to hear them from you.
Yeah, we're ready to hear some emails, get some fresh ones coming in. We've been getting emails on our old stories, but now let's get some new stuff. So you can always email us at therigormortispodcast@gmail.com.
On Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Rigor Mortis Podcast.
You can follow us independently. You can find me as Dr. Scullyfingers on all things social media.
I don't even know my Instagram anymore.
Is it like Rigor Mortis _ J Lou? J Lou Rigor Mortis?
Let's take a look here. Rigor Mortis _ JLEW.
I love it. So hit us up, guys. Thanks for listening. Please get this podcast out to some friends. We're trying to boost things up here. Let's get a revamp on this show. And until next week, we'll see you later.